Daughters of Reddit, what is something you wish your father knew about girls when you were growing up? Guess I kind of consider myself a daddy's girl, so here are all the things I'd probably tell him now. All those times you just accepted things that were girly without ever attracting any kind of attention to it really went a long way towards helping me build a healthy perception of guys. You never expressed any kind of disdain or machismo when I asked for your help in tangling my Barbie's hair or prodding you with magic fairy wands. You never hesitated to teach me practical skills, and you never attributed gender to them. It was always, come over here and let me show you how to snake the drain, because you're going to need to do this. By the way, Dad, I snaked my first drain all on my own last month. I'm so glad you taught me. Thank you for bailing me out when I was in a pinch, no questions asked. No guilting, no attempts at squeezing out information. I felt like I could come to you with any dilemma. This took a load of my shoulders because Mom is so reactive and freak out first, maybe resolve later. You respect me, which makes me respect you even more. When I call you out on BS, you actually repent and reflect. You don't deflect back on me and pull the "I'm the parent and know better than you" spiel. You actually took the time to sit and watch my cartoons or attempt to understand my video games or other hobbies. Mom always turned up her nose. You didn't. Do you know how awesome it is to watch your dad actually laugh at the cartoon your mother just dismissed as dumb minutes before? So gratifying. All those times you went shopping for groceries and picked up ladies' sanitary supplies without any hesitation, even if you did affectionately rename the long super maxi pads, low salt maxis. Thank you for all those secret times you let me pick something out of the vending machine to eat when we were on trips together. You knew Mom would never allow it. You take great pride in embarrassing me, but you know exactly where to draw the line so it's endearingly goofy, not genuinely embarrassing. You know your audience and play to it. I feel no shame when my friends, or now fiancé, are around you. It's okay if your hands were too callous to properly tie my ballet skirt before classes. I could tie it myself. But I didn't tell you at the time because I knew it made you happy to help me. So don't be embarrassed because the fabric kept snagging on your calluses. I wish you took your dental hygiene more seriously. I think your lax attitude and seeing you lose a lot of your teeth didn't set the best example for my sister while we were growing up. Edit, did not expect gold, yikes. I realize closing with a comment about my dad's flossing habits is kind of lame, but it was stream of consciousness. I'm getting married in the fall and have been planning on writing a letter to my parents separately, so many of the points I made here I already want to share with him. He's my hero. Edit just in case people are worried, I adore my mom and we're really close. This probably makes her sound like a buzzkill, but I swear I could absolutely spend all day writing how incredible she is too. Also, I called my dad and the first thing he says when he picks up is, "Oh good. I was hoping you'd call. I picked a song for our father-daughter dance at your wedding. I was sure to tell him how I felt." That's the most wholesome comment I've read all week. Your dad sounds awesome, smiley face. I just had my son a couple months ago. I didn't have a good example of a father while I was growing up, but your dad sounds like everything I'm striving to be. Having hands too callous to tie a ballet skirt is poetic to me. Speaks volumes. We have a 2-year-old daughter, with a boy on the way. Last night I got home from work just in time to kiss her goodnight. Usually we say, "Good night, insert name," and she replies, "Night night mama, dada." Last night I said, "Good night princess," and she repeated, "Night night princess." I just smiled and said, "You're the princess, I'm just dada." My wife heard me on the baby monitor and had tears running down her face as it was apparently the cutest thing ever. She did blame part of it on the hormones, lol. That it is best to have a personal bond with your father, a hobby or activity that's the two of you no matter how small, and not him just be there when the whole family is together. When our outdoor cats would get ticks I quickly alerted my father and we removed them. For him a chore and for me the one thing that was us doing something together. +1 on this one. GF and I have been together 4 years, and we have a 10-year-old from before we met. She's glued to her mom's hip since they came here from El Salvador with nothing but each other. Last year they had a big spring festival at school, and her mom had to work. 10yo was super bummed, so I offered to take her instead. We spent the night playing little carnival games, doing puzzles, playing sports, etc. And had an absolute blast. It was the first time we ever did something just me and her without her mom. That day completely changed our relationship. She started telling everyone I was her dad, started asking to do things just the two of us, and overall became a lot more affectionate with me. We regularly go and do our own thing like bike rides, fishing, frisbee, and basketball now. Her mom and I just had twin girls, so she's feeling a bit like a spare tire these days. I should make more of an effort to do some stuff just me and her since it's been 100% focus on the babies for months now. Glad I clicked this thread, I'll get something planned just for us this weekend. Reminds me of how my dad used to go out and chain smoke in our backyard patio when I was a kid. He'd sit in this chair that was right by the dryer vent. I used to put pennies under the vent and use that as an excuse to sit near him. It'd say I was checking how much more lint, dirt, whatever was collecting on a certain penny. I remember having these long, weird conversations. Hey, Dad, look, remember how this penny had only a little lint yesterday and now look. And he'd always humor me in these conversations, even though looking back he probably really wanted to be left alone while he drank, smoked. He never let that on though. It seems so silly to look back on, but it meant, and still means, so much to me. I should probably tell him that. My parents always had foster children and 3 of their own. Then they adopted one. I don't think I ever really had my parents to myself for any length of time. And I honestly don't think my parents ever gave a second thought about it. They were doing God's work. That's all that really mattered. Now I'm 34. My dad was giving me shit recently for not knowing how to do things. Like, how to change my oil, or how to fix something. He knew how to do everything but he didn't share that information with me. When I finally piped up and said, how could I have ever spent quality time learning something from you when there were 6 other kids competing for your one-on-one attention? He said, I never really thought about it like that. Do you feel like you were slighted by how we raised you? And the answer is yes, I do. It might be selfish, but I feel like I missed out on having a quality relationship with my parents. We lived in constant chaos from behavior problems. Sometimes I feared for my life. Sometimes they taught me intimate details about sex. I wish I had spent more time with my parents. To this day, they still spend all of their time raising someone else's kids. I wouldn't change a thing about it though, because those kids needed my parents more than I did. Hopefully someday soon, they'll retire, and when I call they can finally ask about my life instead of telling me about the constant chaos. I remember a few times in my adult life, my dad and I would work on projects. He'd think they were dumb. Hey Dad, I wanna restore this rusty old fish tank stand into a coffee bar. But he would always help me with the projects and I think he finally got enough time with me to see me as a person instead of just one more of his kids. Those little things matter, even if your child never speaks up and tells you. There's nothing more valuable than time and love. Edit, I didn't expect this to get so much attention. For the record, I adore my parents and what they've done for other people. They are selfless and amazing people. I just wish I could spend more time with them. This is so important. My dad would watch Toonami shows with me until they were over so he could have the TV. He probably had no idea what was going on but he patiently watched them with me. Wish I could have those days back. Sad face. Don't be scared of having your picture taken. If your daughter wants to take pictures of you, or especially with you, let them. My dad died when I was 13 years old and then I realized that all of his hiding from the camera meant I was left with only a handful of photos and he wasn't in any of our home videos. You don't realize how important they can be until you aren't able to make new ones. Edit, extra words. This actually hits me pretty hard. A lot of these comments do, but this one in particular. We just had our first child, a wonderful little girl, about 2 weeks ago. I have one picture with her that shows my face. I have never liked taking photos and have always resented it. This made me look at it from a different perspective, thank you. Edit, holy hot damn replies. I unfortunately do not know my father so it hits home even more in that aspect. But no matter, I will be taking some daily pictures now with her. Someone did mention making a private social media account and I kinda like that idea. We are keeping a tight lid on socials right now, posting very few and not letting others post. Thank you all for the tips and the stories. I have the most wonderful father in the world. This post isn't going to be things I wish he knew, but more things he did that were awesome when I was growing up since I'm seeing a lot of daddies with little girls commenting that they're reading this post. My dad never hesitated to do girly things with me. He was the one who took me school shopping. We would often hit Starbucks and then pick up chocolate-covered strawberries afterwards. He would fix my hair for school and paint my nails for me. I remember wanting a head full of tiny braids, this was the 90s, and he spent hours of his Saturday afternoon braiding. We played with Barbies and he actually came up with storylines for them and put effort into it. On the other hand, he also never kept me from doing tomboy things. I raised baby calves, helped him wash cars, and worked on the lawnmower. When I was little we had daddy-daughter dates where we would go to Chuck E. Cheese or mini golfing. When I was in middle school and high school we would go to the pool together and lay out and talk. A few years ago we got tickets to see Miley Cyrus Bangers tour and got drunk together and had the best time. He was always patient with anything regarding my self-esteem. He helped me lose weight when I was in middle school and waited for hours for me to get ready before we went somewhere, and never, ever commented on anything other than to compliment me. The biggest thing I think that he did, and still does, is to encourage my independence. He helped me through school and constantly reminds me that I am a strong woman and that I don't ever have to get married if I don't want to. My mother used to put a lot of pressure on me to settle down. He is my friend along with being my dad. I'm forever thankful for him. Edit, my first gold. Thank you. Was not expecting that. And thank you all for the comments. I'm going to send my dad this post so he can see what an awesome response it got and how special he really is. I truly am incredibly lucky to have him and I recognize that. I already tell him how much I appreciate him all the time and my first big tattoo was a portrait of us together, but I think he will really love seeing this. Also, to all the dads who have commented saying they hope they can be like my dad, if you try to be, you will be. He put effort into our relationship and that's what matters. Smiley face. I have a 4-year-old daughter and I want to be exactly like your dad. Thanks for posting this. I hope I can be this for my 6-year-old daughter. I spend a lot of time with her, take her skating, take her fishing and swimming in summer, and try to teach her what I can. I read to her and do most of the cooking. We sometimes draw or paint and I can see her trying to copy what I do in her own way. I try to set firm boundaries for her. She's very stubborn and independent, like me, but sometimes she throws tantrums when she doesn't get her way. It's a tough line to walk in being both a parent, authority figure and a friend. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing it wrong. She generally listens to my wife more as the main authority figure and tries to constantly test boundaries with me. Thank you for your insight. It's good to know that maybe I'm doing a few things right. I hope I can figure the rest out as she gets older. She's beautiful in my eyes no matter what. I imagined the love I would feel for my children before she was born, but it was a much more unimaginably strong feeling of love that I felt the first time I held her in my arms. Every time I see her or think about her it takes me back to that wonderful moment when she became a part of my life. I'm forever thankful to my wife for cooking up this little miracle and I hope that I never let either of them down. Obviously your dad doesn't pressure you to settle down, and it should only happen if, when it feels right, but does his example ever give you an urge to have children of your own? Your children are always more important than your second or third wife. Edit, wow, thank you for gold. I think this is more important of a comment than many realize. When my parents divorced, my dad was always taking trips with his new GF on weekends I was supposed to be with him. It was excruciating when I was 15. My dad did that as well. Granted I was a teenager when he remarried, but it shouldn't matter. My dad is a biker. When I was little we would go on rides. I'd go with him to swap meets, toy runs, or just because. When he met his now wife, that stopped. Now, I understand not going everywhere with him. But it went from, let's go for a ride, to, wife number 3 will be mad, sad, jealous if you go and she doesn't. WTF? I asked for a ride for my 17th birthday. Just a ride for like half an hour. Instead, he gave me $100 and dropped me off at the mall. I loathe shopping. He'd rather throw money at a problem, in hopes that it'd go away than take 30 minutes to spend with his kid. I'm an only child on that side. I have half-sibs on my mom's side, so it's not like he'd be making other kids feel left out. Just her. Over the years I've realized that he's a selfish, stubborn jackass that isn't worth my time. He really doesn't give a damn about me, and not just because of my step-bimbo. That and since Trump became elected, something changed in him. He's somebody I don't recognize. I haven't spoken to him since Charlottesville last year. He doesn't even know I'm pregnant. It's sad really, he'll never know his granddaughter. Edit, because, apparently, I can't spell. Smiley face. Edit again, to clarify, this is not just political, it's just the most recent event. People seem to be fixated on that component of my comment. I said, over the years I've realized that he's a selfish, stubborn jackass that isn't worth my time. He really doesn't give a damn about me, and not just because of my step-bimbo, first. Trump has only been spewing his bullshit for a couple years. There's a lot of time between 1999, stepmom stuff, and 2017. Our standards of how we expect to be treated by men come from how you treat our mothers. Show her kindness, we will expect kindness. Treat her like shit and we assume being treated like shit is normal. Edit, my fist Reddit gold, 3 thanks stranger. And to everyone else, I'm glad to hear this may have given some of you insight into why you or a loved one are the way you are. This applies to all genders and family dynamics. I came here to say this. Also, how he treats you contributes to that. For a long time, I didn't know why I kept getting involved with guys who invalidated my feelings, gaslighted me, lied to me, and put me on the backseat as far as priorities go. That's how my dad treated my mom and how he treated me. I don't respect my dad because of the way he treats my mom. He'll come home and say shit like, "Why isn't my food on the table?" My mom will want to go somewhere and he will say, "Make me a sandwich before you leave," and delay my mom. He'll eat and leave his dishes there. I've never seen him help out or clean up after himself, ever. Has told me, "You're getting older, you need to start cooking and cleaning." Whenever he comes home, me and my sister go to our rooms because he will demand stuff if we are around. He makes sexist remakes which he thinks are jokes. He will always comment if I'm doing anything domestic. Once my sister cooked herself some food and he came home and asked where his was. My sister lost her shit and said he needs to do it himself, he does nothing. To which he replied, "I pay the bills." That's when it was over, and was when I started fantasizing that he would one day go to work and not come home. Edit, on mobile so typos. Don't just assume your daughter won't be interested in your activities because they aren't stereotypically girly or because once as a small child, she didn't want to do it. Not wanting, say, go hiking or fishing when I was 5 years old doesn't mean I never ever want to do it. Keep trying to get your kids involved in your life and don't just give up. You're teaching them not to share things about themselves and losing the chance to bond over something you love. At the same time, if they don't want to do the thing, don't make them do the thing, but don't stop asking them to do the thing unless they tell you to stop asking. That it doesn't make you look weak to show affection once in a while. My dad hardly ever hugged us or said he loved us. I guess I just don't understand other dads that don't do this. I can't stop giving my daughters hugs, kisses, and telling them I love them. God, I probably do this a million times a day. I just love them so much, and hate being away from them when I'm at work. It is always hugs, kisses and I love yous the second I walk through the front door. Usually they come running to me with arms wide open, yelling, "Daddy, God, that has got to be the best feeling in the world." Edit, holy inbox Batman. I have never ever got this many messages before. Thank you everyone for all your kind words and sharing of sentiments, experiences and thoughts. I did not expect this to blow up so much. If I don't respond back to everyone, just know I love you all. Now, if you've got kids, get of Reddit and go hug them and tell them you love them. I've got a little more time to kill at work, shish, before I can go home and do that, but you know that's what I'm going to do. And I remember being told about my dad crying on the couch holding my bunny as it was dying because I wasn't home. He was upset for days over it. That stuff has really made an impact on me as an adult in the dating world and I feel very lucky. I'm not sure about girls in general. To me, I'd rather have had a dad who was there, than a dad who was successful and a workaholic. When your dad is gone, you remember the silly little things, the bedtime stories he told you, playing with you on the beach, having ice cream together. Be a father who is present in your daughter's life. Play with her when she's small. Tell her stories. When she's older, listen to her. Take an interest in her interests even if they sound silly. Take an interest in her life in general. That's all anyone can ask. I wholeheartedly agree with this. My dad told me later in my life that he was really nervous to be a dad to a girl, but he was an amazing dad when I was growing up, he still is. I was not an only child, but he always made time for just the two of us. My favorite memories are of us just going to get an ice cream cone at Dairy Queen after dinner on a random summer night. He also used to show up to everything I did in terms of sports games even though I was terrible or school plays, etc. Even though he worked upwards of 50 hours a week. When I got into the awkward middle school, high school days, and they were pretty bad for me because I was bullied and had depression, he would always ask me about my day, every day. Even though I mostly went to my mom with all my issues, knowing my dad cared meant a lot. I didn't realize it at the time, but I am so lucky to have my dad. Even to this day, I'm in my late 20s, married, and live on the other side of the country. I know that he's always there. Taking pointers here as I got a little girl on the way. Edit, thanks to everyone congratulating me and the added advice. I want you all to know I'll be taking it to heart. Also, I love that my highest upvoted comment is about my little girl. This is me. My father works overseas my entire life and I have so little memories of him when I was little. He would be away 12 months at a time and be home a month or less. And those times he is home, I am in school most of the day. I basically grew up without a father, though me and my siblings know he has to sacrifice working away so we could have a better life. But I keep on wondering how our lives would have been only if he chose to stay. It hurts so much just thinking about it. That it's great you're extending the offer to spend time together, but when you invite your kid to the garage to help with something, actually have them help with something. For context, my dad would be working on his boat engine or something, and he'd say come help me with this, and then I'd sit on a bucket for 20 minutes watching him in silence, and finally wander off out of boredom. Looking back, it's great he wanted to spend time with me and I appreciate that, but being present and being involved are two different things. Holy damn, maybe my dad did this to spend time with me too, I had totally never seen it like that. Might go give him a hug. I did the same with my dad growing up. He probably just needed a gopher, go fair this, go fair that. I remember being bored, but I would read a book or play on my Game Boy while he worked and grab him the occasional tool. When I got bigger he let me be more hands-on, until I was basically doing the work. As an adult, I use my kids for the same and it is amazing to have a set of hands to grab you stuff when you're neck deep in a Saturn. I'm going to have to try to do a better job of explaining what I'm doing to keep them interested. I'm a dad who grew up with 3 brothers. All of my brothers had a boy first. I had a girl first and was terrified of how I was going to raise a little girl. She's 14 now and is awesome to be around. I have been a stay-at-home dad since she was 6 months old and we have a tight relationship. My son is 18 months younger and I have learned that the big things aren't that different. I think it's extremely important to take an interest in what they love. Their interest may not align with yours entirely, but showing an interest in their hobbies is the best way to connect with them as they get older. Don't try to pick their hobbies or interest for them either. Kids are their own people. If you are looking forward to tea parties but your daughter prefers baseball, get out there in the yard and toss the ball around. If you are looking forward to bonding over football but your daughter wants to play princesses, then get ready to dress up. Just treat your child as an individual. Raise the child you have, not the child you want. Edit, I did not expect this comment to blow up. I'll address some of the concerns I have seen expressed in my replies. Yes, I know I am not a daughter. This wasn't tagged as serious so I commented. Yes, introduce your children to your interest and hobbies. I never said that wasn't important. Sometimes you may even have to push a little for them to discover that they like something. Some of my kids' biggest interest have come from my wife and I introducing it to them. I'm simply saying that if your child is interested in something you aren't, find out why they love it so much. I'm not huge on horseback riding or middle school wrestling tournaments but those are important to my kids so they are now important to me. Yes, I like Peyton Manning. Thanks for the gold and the great comments. I am sorry that some of you guys and your parents struggled with this growing up. I did as well and that's why it was important for me to change things with my own too. My wife works as a surgeon while I have gotten to stay home and raise my kids. It was a decision that we made for our family because we could afford it and it was well worth it. You can laugh if you want, but I'm chilling in my amazing house on a Wednesday afternoon. What are you doing? Note, this isn't directed towards everyone. Just the people who think they know my life better than I do. I think it's extremely important to take an interest in what they love. This has reminded me to ask my daughter to show me some of her Sims stuff when I get home tonight. I forget because it's not my interest that she really enjoys making and designing the houses and telling the stories of her different characters and families. I figure if she tells me about that stuff, she'll be more likely to tell me about real things in her life when I show that I'm interested. My father likes fishing and watching sports. The only way he would bond with me would be if I showed an interest in fishing. He taught me how to tie flies. I hate fishing, so this is a completely useless skill, or was willing to watch a game with him. I remember him most of my childhood as perpetually on the couch drinking and watching TV and getting upset if my existence got in the way of that. Raise the child you have, not the child you want. I think this is one of the most powerful parenting advice I've ever read. I wish my dad did this. Now that I am in my early 30s, I can tell he misses me, but we never had much connection as he was quiet and stoic and always wanted me to be the jock, redneck hunter. I am a geeky artist type. I know he loves me, but it's so hard to try and start a relationship as an adult. I always feel it would have been easier sooner in my life. This is more general to parents, but I think it applies a lot to girls and fathers. Her feelings are real and valid. The problem she's sobbing about, whether it's a boy or a fight with a friend or whatever, may seem trivial or silly to you, but those feelings are so important to her right now. In 10 years you can tease her about Jimmy from science class who she thought liked her but ended up asking her friend Alice to the dance. Now is not the time. Don't belittle her about it. Listen to her, ask her questions, learn about her life. It may seem boring to you, but my dad listened to me. He remembered my friends' names and would ask me about them. He asked me seriously about what I wanted for the future. And you know what, I'm 25 now and I still confide in my father. He calls me just to chat and I tell him about my feelings and I ask him about his. It only takes one mean joke to put that wall up, and it is hella hard to take down. Edit, yes, this certainly applies to sons as well. And other relationships too. Treat people's feelings as valid. Other edit, what I think a lot of people are missing is that this does not mean you let your child throw tantrums in public or break things because they are upset. By all means, please teach your child healthy ways to cope with their feelings. But don't tell them they shouldn't feel their emotions. To shut it down the way they feel. That they are babyish or immature for crying about something. The rest of the world is going to do its damnedest to make kids hard, to tell them to get over it. Don't be that. Let you be the person they can feel fully around. Male here, and I couldn't agree more. I used to talk about video games at great length with my father. We're talking early 90s here, so there typically weren't epic stories or anything. He always listened and seemed to care. Having since grown, I have come to realize he had zero interest, but he was happy to listen because I had interest. Doesn't matter, she says, with a sad little sigh, and you know that it's only a friend or a guy, or a moment at school, or a thing that she said, or the teacher she's got, or the prom night ahead, or the drama in class, or the length of her hair, or the chore that was totally, really unfair, and you want her to come, and you want her to see, but it matters to her. Single quote. But it matters to me. I was depressed in middle school and would cry every night. One night my dad said, "You know, if you were a boy you wouldn't cry like this." It changed the way I saw him, as though I were some weakling, like he would rather have a boy. But it also imparted how terrible it must be to be a boy and not be able to cry if you're depressed or anxious. So I guess I would add to let your kid get their feelings out no matter what gender they are. Edit, for the record, my dad's a great father, this is just one memory that always bothered me. I think you hit on something really real there that all parents should keep in mind. What caused your child to feel something might be trivial, but the way they feel is not. How to put hair in ponytails, brush long hair in general. Just thinking about it 20 years later makes my scalp hurt. Also, to include the daughter in stereotypically male housework. I can cook and load a dishwasher like my life depends on it, but I can't do any sort of maintenance like putting up a picture frame or unclogging a sink. When I got older, I learned that there exists detangler brushes. They're not perfect, but they help a lot for combing hair with tangles so as to reduce pain in brushing hair. My hair gets tangled really easily, so it makes a huge difference. I dunno why they didn't exist in my childhood. Parents weren't aware of them somehow. I was never exposed to them. Took way too long to learn that they existed. Can't recommend them enough. But frankly, I'd prioritize getting kids comfortable with managing their own hair, since it's way easier to avoid hurting ourselves as opposed to someone else who can't feel when it hurts. I don't really like people brushing my hair, honestly. My dad was fairly useless with housework, so my mom did a lot of those male chores and taught me. I lived with my in-laws for a bit, and mother-in-law is really big on gender norms and chores. I would do things to help out, like build the fire or unclog the drain when it got blocked, and she would come in and tell me, "That's men's work." Not to me, it wasn't. When I lived alone, I would have been spending a lot of money if I had to wait for a man to do those things. That not every instance of anger or sadness on my part was because it must be that time of the month. My dad is a great guy all around, but used to bring that up, even jokingly, waay too often. What no one seems to get is that being on my period doesn't make it so I'm just mad or falling apart and sad all the time. These emotions are just a little bit more intense, but if I'm angry at you, I probably would be angry at you anyway if I weren't on my period. I would maybe be a little bit slower to show that I'm angry though. And when it's that time of the month, don't write off my period cramps as me overreacting. Sorry, couldn't resist. As someone who nearly fainted in public today because I've dealt with insanely painful periods for 13 years, it's one of my biggest pet peeves when people, including my dad, think they can't be that bad and I'm using them as an excuse to lay in bed. No, they're that bad. Ever been in so much pain you've thrown up? I have many times. It's real pain. Just because you've never experienced it doesn't mean it's fake. Seriously, no matter what time of the month it is, hearing that makes me so upset. It's just another excuse people, guys and women, have for being inconsiderate to others' feelings. If you spend a good portion of your daughter's childhood talking about how much better and easier a son would be to raise, don't be surprised when your daughter grows up confiding almost exclusively in her mother and never in you. Unfortunately, it's something both my parents kept bringing up. They never intended to make me feel bad, it's just something they'd say randomly out of the blue. But it always pierced me either way. It's something that will always stick with me, and thanks to them, if I ever have a daughter, I'll make sure to fight tooth and nail and bloody bones to let her know that I had a fantastic time raising her and wouldn't have it any other way. When your daughter is going through puberty and starts getting her period, don't write off the things she's going through. There's all sorts of new hormones swirling around in there, and they're gonna affect her mood. She's getting periods, they're probably gonna hurt. Being in pain makes you grumpy, but don't write off every instance of anger or bad temper as being because you're on your period. Maybe her mom doesn't get bad ones, maybe you've never thought about it because your wife is a grown woman who has learned to deal with her periods and the assorted mood swings and pains and moved on. Your daughter hasn't yet. Be a little more thoughtful, help teach her ways to manage what she's feeling. If she's in a lot of pain, and it doesn't change after a while, take her to a doctor. Maybe nothing's wrong and she got shit luck, but she could have endometriosis or cystic ovaries. Stick up for her at the doctor. Lots of women have trouble finding doctors who will listen to them about their pain, and it's very hard to advocate for yourself when you're only 14 and throwing up from pain. Maybe her mom doesn't get bad ones. I get bad periods. Like, not awful, but I'll need some kind of pain meds at least once a month. My mother, meanwhile, has such easy periods that when she was pregnant and her doctor said that going into labor would feel like really bad period cramps, she responded, "People get cramps on their period?" The jealousy is never ending. And on the psychological side, while most girls get moody around their period, it is not normal for them to cry hysterically for extended periods, have panic attacks, experience violent mood swings, have sudden depressive episodes, etc. That's likely premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Hysterically. I don't know that this is anything but bad advice, but for some reason, it worked for me. I remember shortly after my daughter got her period, she had a nighttime incident where either her pad had leaked or she wasn't prepared and her period came overnight. I don't recall why I dealt with it instead of my wife, but I know I was there in the middle of the night taking sheets off the bed, putting them in the wash, etc. I made some comment like, "Dear God, did you kill a small animal in here?" but said in the right moment and in the right tone of voice that she just started cracking up. And since that moment, her periods were never something to be hidden or shameful about or anything like that. I think that it just sent the message that she didn't do anything wrong, there was nothing to be embarrassed about, I wasn't mad or grossed out, everything was perfectly natural. And because I could joke about it at 3 o'clock in the morning, she somehow realized it wasn't the big deal she was maybe thinking it was. Unwanted sexual attention from grown men doesn't always come from strangers. It comes from family, friends, too. Pay attention to your friends' behaviors and comments around your kids. My dad cut off a longtime friend after catching him leering at me in a bathing suit at a pool party when I was only 12. This goes for moms and sons too. My mom definitely had some friends that were creepy to me and she would laugh it off if I said anything. I do not have a bond with my dad. At best he's like a cool uncle. When I was in middle school I stayed with him a lot because his house was right next to my school. He told me I only got my period because my friends had it and I wanted to be like them. However, it wasn't all bad because for some reason he thought pads and tampons cost $40, so he gave me $50 every month when I got my period. Until my mom ratted me out. Edit because someone called me out for not answering the question. My answer is no about periods and what a girl goes through during puberty. It's fucking brutal. Watch Big Mouth on Netflix. JK, don't watch Big Mouth. He told me I only got my period because my friends had it and I wanted to be like them. That bitch Regina thinks only she can bleed? I'ma show her. When I first started my period, I asked my dad for $10 to get tampons. Then the next month, I asked him for tampon money again. He said, "Didn't you just get some last month?" He thought a box of tampons was like a year's supply. How to build and support a healthy self-esteem and lifestyle habits. The things you say and the way you treat her can leave a lasting impression on your daughter. I was a latchkey kid in an Asian household filled with cheap convenience foods, 3 for $1 hot dog bows, Chinese crackers, etc., and lack of income for things to do outside of watching TV at home. So, I grew up overweight and uninformed about healthy lifestyle habits. Since tweenhood, my dad was constantly on me about my body and bluntly laid it out that I would never find a boyfriend. If he saw me in a t-shirt or shorts, he'd comment on how big my arms, thighs looked. I'm now in my late 20s and still refuse to wear tanks, short sleeves, skirts, dresses, shorts because of that idea that has been ingrained in my thought process. The link between being fat and being single still has a huge presence in my mind. My dad passed away last year from his own struggles with his health, cancer, diabetes, hypertension. Since then, I've made my own lifestyle changes and went to therapy. I am about halfway to my weight end goal and I've discovered a love for hiking, spin classes, and yoga. But trying to build up self-esteem through reframing of things and positive self-talk has been the hardest struggle of all. As a daughter whose obese father remarked about my body and looks, I feel your pain. It took a long time for me to think I was attractive. Treating every boy interested in your daughter as your enemy does both of you a disservice. My dad was very overprotective. Anytime a boy had a crush on me, he would be immediately added to my dad's shit list. Even if he was perfectly kind and respectful. After a certain point, I just stopped listening to my dad's complaints. In my eyes, he had lost the right to give input about my relationships. Unfortunately, when I was 17 I became entangled in an abusive relationship. My dad hated the guy. But since he also hated every one of my previous suitors, I didn't interpret his concerns as legitimate. On top of that, since he was so busy trying to prevent me from having relationships, he never talked to me about what a healthy relationship looks like. This is huge advice that I think a lot of fathers miss. The best way to teach your daughter how to avoid assholes is to teach her what a good husband and partner looks like. Listen to your wife and mother and female friends, teach your daughter what respecting a woman looks like. Hug and kiss your wife. Ask your wife for advice. Talk through arguments instead of shouting or resorting to physical violence. Your daughter will grow up understanding what to expect out of a relationship and will naturally avoid losers and scumbags on her own because she'll realize she can do better than that. Additional question: what can the father of an adopted teenage daughter do best? Be open about her feelings about the adoption. It is complicated. Help her search for her bio family as she's interested. Many times, adoptees feel shame for wanting to know more about bio family because it can feel like they're choosing the bio family over their adoptive family. You may not need this advice, but just in case, understand that she is probably going to want to date. It's important for teenagers to learn how to date, navigate romantic and sexual encounters, and to build healthy boundaries and relationships with those partners. If no one can ever date your daughter unless they want to see the barrel of a shotgun pointed at them, she is 1. Going to rebel anyway, 2. Will learn you can't be trusted and won't talk to you, and 3. Miss the opportunity to develop those skills in her teens while she's still young and has her parents nearby to help give advice. The same as an actual father, I'd say. Make sure she is not afraid to bring home the person she is dating. Encourage open communication about relationships, dating, respect, etc. If your daughter is afraid you're going to be waiting on the porch with a shotgun or you're going to read the riot act to whomever they bring home, they are more likely to sneak around behind your back. Edit: it's not the threat of physical harm that is the issue. Most people would likely agree they've heard a version of this and laughed it off as a joke. It's the sense of doubt that it creates in young women. The feeling that they are not capable of making good decisions on their own when it comes to the relationships they choose to pursue. We keeps preaching that we want our daughters to feel empowered to make their own choices. It starts by removing the need for them to choose partners that meet your approval. Instead, empower them by teaching them how to navigate relationships, have the tough and uncomfortable conversations, let them make a few bad decisions so they can appreciate and identify what healthy male interaction looks like. My dad is a great guy. He just said the things that dads were supposed to say 20 plus years ago. It always made me uncomfortable, but I didn't know how to express myself. That's what is so great about this thread: when you know better, you do better. That girls are not delicate little creatures who can't do anything. I always wanted to be an auto mechanic and help work on cars, and he'd never let me. He told me girls can't do man jobs because they cause drama on the job sites when all the guys are worried about sleeping with them. Now I am always having car trouble and have to pay out the ass to get a mechanic to fix simple things because he wouldn't just show me how to fix it. Edited to add that I grew up before the internet. YouTube is awesome now, but there's something really intimidating for me about even trying now just because of the attitude I faced being a girl in my house. I liked reading this. It just wasn't my brother-in-law's strength, so I took each of my nieces after they started driving and had 2 different days of car maintenance 101 with each of them. Open the hood, here's what to check and how to do it, here's how to change a tire, here is your own good quality tire pressure gauge I got for you, here are lights and problems you should not ignore, here are simple parts you get at the auto parts store and change yourself. All 3 said they really liked it, and 2 of them told me they have taught their friends about their own cars. Came here to comment this. I was told to stay out of the kitchen and the garage growing up, so as an adult, I can't cook or work on my car without needing someone to do it for me or a ton of YouTube videos. My mom also wasn't there for me, so I never learned how to apply makeup, what colors, style clothing looks good on me, or the intricacies of bra shopping. I got my first bra my sophomore year of high school from my aunt, and have been wearing sports bras ever since. Having parents show you how to do things, even things they hate doing, still helps in the future. My dad never told me I couldn't, but he also just assumed as a girl I wouldn't want to, so he never asked me to help him, and I never volunteered because I inherited my great communication skills from him. The first time we both worked on my car together, he was thrilled. So like asking your daughter if she wants to do things, even if you think she'll say no, is always a good idea. You're awesome. I'm drinking coffee right now and getting ready to drive to my parents' house where my little sister and I have been working on a 1973 Camaro. When I started getting interested in cars, she'd sit outside with me while I worked on mine. Now she has a project of her own and I'm excited to work with her on it. I'm proud of her too. Old guys will come up and ask me about it only for her to come over and school them with her classic car knowledge. There are some men and boys who are perfectly decent when other men are around, but are not nice to women and girls when there are no other men around. Believe your daughter about her own lived experiences, even if you didn't witness them yourself. And believe other women about their own lived experiences as well. If your daughter grows up hearing you talking about how your mother and sister were clearly overreacting when they said your childhood neighbor was creepy, because, after all, he was always perfectly decent to you, your daughter is not going to go to you when your own neighbor is creepy to her when you're not around. And she will learn to doubt her own instincts because women are all irrational and overreact, including me. Disclaimer: I love my dad, we have a great relationship, he has always believed in my abilities at the end of the day. That when you let your 10-year-old son have more freedom to ride bikes far from home, go to the store alone, and take risks than your 13-year-old daughter for no other reason than her gender, she's going to be pissed and spend the next 10 years rejecting all things feminine because you have convinced her that to be female means to be weak and vulnerable. Masculinity does not equal strength and maturity, and femininity does not equal weakness and gullibility. It took a long time, but he recognizes that now. Additionally, if you tell your daughter she can't do something because she is a girl, but you so much as hint that you would if she were a boy, or you also have a son and let him do it, don't be surprised when she goes and does it anyway. I'm an only child, and my parents largely raised me as feministly as possible, but even they fell into some common pitfalls. I wanted to bike to school if, when I missed the bus, instead of dealing with the hassle of waiting for, parents said no, and let slip it's because I'm a girl. Guess who ended up biking to school anyway every other week without telling them? My dad actually did a pretty good job of raising me as a single dad, as I'm pretty sure my stepmother contributed nothing to my upbringing. The only thing I guess he could have done better was been more knowledgeable about what he called female issues. He didn't really understand periods and cramps and all that associated nonsense because when he was growing up, he was never taught about them and men didn't need to learn. It was just icky to him. When you do something wrong, apologize. Don't just try to ignore what we just fought about and try to be our friend 15 minutes later. When you try to ignore our problem, it hurts us. It makes us angry. We won't want to be friends. My friends and I have almost all had this issue with our dads. The worst thing, though, is when you try to have someone else fix things for you. My dad has asked me to be this middleman for my younger sister, my friend has been asked by her dad, and some others have mentioned their dad sending in their mom. It doesn't make things better, and a lot of the time, makes that middleman lose respect for you. Respect us as people and apologize to us. Now that I'm an adult, I realize just how wonderful my father really is. Not just in comparison to others, but he is an objectively amazing father. He taught us children the hard life lessons while still protecting us. He taught us to be self-sufficient and independent. He taught us to work hard and don't give up just because things get challenging. He busted his ass to make sure we got to go on vacation and experience life. He taught me to hunt, fish, and fix a car. He also taught me to garden and grow my own vegetables. How to take care of livestock and other animals with compassion. However, he also treated me more like a son than a daughter. I only wish that my father would have acknowledged that I'm a girl and it's okay for me to like dressing up and that it's okay to throw like a girl. Granted, I got a full ride to college for sports and that's partly because I had to hang with the boys and my dad didn't want me to be a great female player but just a great player in general. I think he messed me up only in the sense that it's extremely difficult for me to date. I'm either too intimidating to strangers or, one of the boys, to people I know. I think I lost my feminine side because I am so close to my dad and he was slightly dismissive of my emotional side. I had to be tough and stoic. I suppose I shouldn't complain, I just feel like if my dad were less of a hard ass and treated me more like a daughter than a son I would fit in more. Maybe be able to get a date instead of always just being a bro. That being said, I am thankful for the life skills he provided and the protective eye he still has watching over his baby girl. 26 Yo F. Edit, news update, got a lot of confidence from all the positivity and now I've got a date coming up with a guy who doesn't know me or my bros and I get to make an actual first impression without being seen as one of the boys beforehand. Wish me luck. He seems kind and intelligent, I'm really excited to see what happens. Even if it's a flop, it's a good step out of my passive ways. I know nothing, but maybe you can just go up to a guy you like and stoically ask him out like a bro? I know I'd be into that, being a random internet stranger who's probably from another country. Try and find what works for you. Don't make comments about my friend's breasts, don't make comments about the small size of mine, stop talking about teenagers' breasts, Jesus Christ. Yes. I wish I could upvote this 100 times more. Don't comment on their bodies, period. Especially when they are going through puberty. Read a book about female bodies, specifically menstruation. And stop acting like pads and tampons will kill you if you see, touch, or God forbid buy them. Girls are starting their period much earlier than they used to, and they're going to need support. Luckily my dad worked through all that with my mom and then my older sister, so he was pretty chill. But I remember a friend having to keep her supplies hidden in her room and her dad yelling at her for not holding it and staining a car seat. As a male, I don't understand the fear of buying pads or tampons. It's obviously not for me, so why be embarrassed? Love how some people think you can hold it in like P.R. Bad Woman's Anatomy. I just wanted to tack on that: if you're buying tampons or pads for your child, ask what size they want and do your best to get that one. I asked my dad to get me regular tampons once and he came home with Super Plus. At least he tried. Maybe it's because my dad is a doctor, sister close to my age and a caring mother, but I've never understood this fear of a woman's pad or tampon. I would cheerfully buy them or go find them for my sister and mom since I was old enough to handle money. I remember one time being 11 or 12 and buying some pads while my mom filled gas. The old lady behind the counter asked me why I was buying them and I blankly respond, because my mom asked me to. Never crossed my mind that it should be weird. How much it sucks to feel ugly and the measures we take to avoid that. This didn't really begin to be a problem until I was older, but my dad would always get really mad when I wanted to leave the house looking good. My brother would just throw random clothes on, whereas I wanted to wear nice clothes and put makeup on. He'd get mad over how superficial and shallow he thought I was. In reality, how nice we look makes a big difference in how seriously we are taken and how we are treated. Even if you think your daughter is fine and has nothing to worry about, chances are, most people, and men especially, will not feel the same way. Good reality check here. I get mad at my daughter all the time about how much she slows us down when I'm trying to get her ready to leave the house, and it's not for any of the reasons you're talking about yet. She's just 4, and easily distracted, but I have to remember what you said as she gets older. I wish my dad understood the same thing, but for different reasons. If anything, he encouraged me to wear more makeup and nicer clothes. I really wish he realized how horrible it is for women to look, or worse, be, unattractive before he made comments about ugly women that I still remember now. He once said he doesn't like to date women his own age because they don't look good. I asked him if he thought it would be okay for my future husband to leave me when I start to age, and he claimed that's different. He left my mom for a younger, prettier woman, and when she died, married one who was even younger. My husband still has to reassure me sometimes that he won't do the same. That we take everything he says to heart and he has to be kind. His words can leave deep wounds that stay with her for a lifetime. Don't tell them that having eating disorders is better than being fat. Related to this, just don't call your daughters fat in general. My dad starting telling me I was fat at 17 years old when I was only 115 pounds. My brother followed his example and joined in. Not long after I started restricting my eating 500 calories a day. Even now, at 23, I still struggle with starving myself, binging and have a horrible body image. My dad actually was an amazing man and I think very special as a dad. He really encouraged our independence and our want to learn about anything and everything, which I think a lot of dads forget to do. He focused a lot on education and as a result my brothers and I were reading very, very early, which helped us be interested in things like the Science Museum and the zoo and any sort of science program on TV. He used to just let us run crazy as kids because he knew how important it was for us to savor actually being kids. When I was little I made a mud pit in the backyard. We had a hole that our Weimaraner dug and it got filled with water, so 3-year-old me thought it would make the perfect mud pit. After about half an hour of playing by myself my dad came outside and saw me, naked, covered in mud, in the pit. Where other parents probably would have been pissed, he laughed and grabbed the camera. As we got older he encouraged our independence and hobbies. For my brothers it was gaming, and I made a lifelong career from their interest in gaming. For me it was theater, then science, and eventually wildlife. My dad wanted to be a biologist but never had the drive or money to finish college, so I used to teach him all about genetics and about how the phylogenetic trees of various organisms had changed. He knew a lot, but wanted to know all about how science had changed and what the new concepts were. He outfitted me with field gear, and when we would go camping or hiking together, we'd rock, flip and look for herpetofauna. He helped me with a plant project a few years ago and that was probably the most fun we had. He just never discouraged our interests and passions, which is so important. This doesn't really have a point anymore, I think I just needed to write this out. My dad died 3 weeks ago very unexpectedly and no man on earth could rival how amazing he was. He truly is responsible for our independence and wonder of the world, and I think more dads need to be like him. Dads, let your daughters and sons learn freedom. Let them explore the world and make an effort to be interested in their interests no matter how weird or dumb you think they might be. Let your kids be kids and do dumb things sometimes. Also, always let your daughter know that you have her back. Whatever stupid decision she makes, trouble she runs into, dumb man she dates or gets involved with, you've got her and you'll be there for her when things fall apart. My dad was so good about that. That not all girls like playing with only dolls, cooking sets and pretty dresses. Sometimes we like playing with boy toys too, like balls, cars and army men. Also, liking one doesn't mean you might not like the other. I loved Barbies and bugs. For Christmas my grandparents used to always buy me a RC car or something and would get my sister something like fake jewelry. It was the absolute worst because neither of us liked either of those things. The cars and shit took too long to assemble and I never liked cars or mechanical stuff, and my sister had no idea what to do with fake jewelry at like 8 years old and would feel left out. We appreciated the thought, but buying presents solely based on gender isn't a good idea. We would both prefer clay, to be honest. If you ever don't know what to get kids, get them clay. My dad is awesome. I remember him telling me once that the best thing a father can do for his daughter is love and respect her mother. There is a place between interrogation and silence. It's called conversation. Also, no, do not tell me that once I decide to let a boy do something, I'm stuck letting him do that forever. No, women are not seen as less classy because they curse. I love my dad dearly, but we always get in huge arguments about how, if Wyoming exists. It's really frustrating sometimes. He really thinks that it's a state. I have a 6-year-old and only realized recently I am pretty much about as clueless as a man can be about women. Not many female relatives and only have had guy friends. So this is important info. Get involved and stay involved. The WTF is going on and how do I handle this? Moments will get fewer and further between. Do not make a big deal about periods. Get comfortable talking about them. Make it no big deal. Go to the store and get what she needs. Be cool. No matter how embarrassed and cringing you are, put all of that aside to make it as easy as possible. Don't freak, don't play up to the humor of the awkward dad. Finally, don't tease her. This one is hard, because teasing kids is funny. Don't do it. Don't do anything involving the phrase, just kidding, because they do not have a couple decades of experience. They are just little kids, even when they are older, and it fucks up their trust even if they laugh at the time. Tell jokes, never make them the butt of a joke. Single, custodial, father of 3 teenage daughters here. Don't let them attach their value to their appearance. Let them be pretty, and tell them they are when they've made an effort to be. I can see you're dressing up today, you look very pretty, but that should not be your go-to compliment. Praise her accomplishments. Praise her work, praise her intellect, praise her efforts even. Don't praise her for something she can't control. This gives her the power to actually improve herself in life, and doesn't make her vulnerable to someone who only flatters her. Teach them how to lose. As much as you never want your kids to come up short, let them. Then show them the way to winning is harder work. They will face loss in their life, whether promotions, sports contests, or even relationships. These will break them if they don't know how to lose. Acknowledge the defeat, validate their feeling of loss, but don't let them give up. Also, make them acknowledge their part in the loss, but don't blame them, they already blame themselves. Then show them the way to get better. This does multiple things. It shows them that a loss doesn't define them, it shows them that winning takes hard work, and it empowers them to decide if they're willing to put in the work it takes to win. Be protective, not restrictive. They learn early that the things they are told to abstain from are actually fun, like eating dessert first. Don't be restrictive by telling them, don't drink, no sex, no drugs. They're going to experiment with these once in their life, so set a goal for them to reach. I actually learned this from an ex-GF. There's a time and place to experiment with alcohol, sex, and marijuana. It's called college, thank you. This makes sure you've had time to discuss it beforehand, that they get to college, and that they've gotten most, if not all the information ahead of time. Casual misogyny at home against other women is going to cause your daughter to internalize those issues. Also, my dad never took interest in our personal lives or tried to connect with us in a deeper level. We, especially me, since my brother was a boy, functioned more as trophies for him to show off. Any issue we had was foisted off in my mom. She was without a doubt the reason we did so well, but my dad always took the credit for it both inside and outside the home. I can understand that kids don't always have interesting interests, but he never even tried. And now he's surprised when we don't talk to him about anything and go straight to mom. Plus he gets mad that neither of us put effort into our relationship with him. What can I say? You reap what you sow. I would have liked my father to realize that the way he conducted himself with women, be it his various wives, girlfriends or random women he worked with, has shaped my perception of men. My father is great in many ways, but he is not a faithful individual. He doesn't even hide it well. It's made me extremely mistrusting of men in general, something I'm working on, and it makes me sad for him and his woman of the hour, his words. I wish my dad understood more about PMS and period symptoms. He never wanted us, 3 daughters, to complain about our periods or use having cramps as an excuse to stay home from school because millions of women had their period every day and they were able to go to school, work, etc. I thought my debilitating periods and unbearable cramps were normal and I needed to just suck it up. Except as adults my sisters and I all discovered individually that our periods are not normal. In fact, we have endometriosis, which not only left us in terrible pain each month but also eroded our fertility month by month. Taught to shut up and bear it, none of us talked to our gynecologists about our terrible period symptoms and never sought birth control to help mitigate the damage done to our bodies. Now, 2 out of 3 of us have had to go through IVF to have children. My youngest sister assumes she will have to go through the same if she ever chooses to have kids. After my diagnosis and fertility treatments, I was able to get on hormonal birth control to help manage the pain. If I'd talked to my gyno much earlier and gotten on BC, I could have been living pain-free and possibly preserved my fertility. I know without a doubt that I will advocate for my daughter as she gets older if she shows any sign of having endo. That we can be very sensitive about our bodies, looks once we become aware of them. That if you say your 8-year-old is too chubby to wear something, that is going to stick in her brain forever. Choose your words wisely and realize that not only the super skinny child had worth. Daughters are not property.